everyone, welcome back to V-Baby Takes. We are going to get into this video. A lot of y'all have been asking for several tips, so I'm going to start a little series where I give y'all some of the things that I do and how it's been working out for me. Today we are going to start with the commuter life. I have always been a commuter since I was at regional. I started out as a commuter and then I got lucky to be based at home, and then I left that life to go mainline, and I am back to the commuting life. So yes, what is commuting? As a flight attendant, when you apply, you agree that you do not care where they send you. You have to agree that you are willing to relocate anywhere, right? Some people do it and they just upend their life and, go to a new city. Some people commute. That's me. I knew coming into this that I was not moving no matter where they put me, and my company does not have any bases where I live, so I knew I was going to be somewhere else regardless, but I was okay with that. So I currently live in Dallas. I've lived in Dallas ever since I've been a flight attendant, and I currently commute out of Newark, or commute to Newark, and I'm based there, so I have to operate out of Newark, International, and LaGuardia. With my regional, I commuted to Chicago, which was a good experience as well. But yes, my experience has been pretty good so far. I always get on the flight. Some people are so against commuting, which I get, because it really is another job added on to your job already. I have to fly in the night before, so it cuts off my off days. Like, it's a thing. But I'm not moving to Jersey. So yeah, after my trips, I usually go home. I'm the person, I don't care how many countries you send me to, how many hotels you put me in. It's nothing like my bed at my house. So when my trips are over, as long as I get released into my off days, I try to get home as quickly as possible. Even if I have 2 days off, y'all, it's a problem, but that's just me. You don't have to do it. So how does commuting work? So basically, you have the option of using your flight benefits that you have to fly standby. That's what I usually do. I just list for my company's the airline on, how you do standby stuff. Basically, if there's a seat on the plane, you get on. If there's not a seat on the plane, they roll you over to the next flight. You can do that, or you can also list for the jump seat. As long as you have an agreement with your company to jump seat on another airline or your current airline, then you can use the jump seat, basically. I've jump seated once and I don't really care for it because my commute is kind of long. It's like 3.5 hours, so I try to get a seat. If I can't, then obviously I'm gonna jump seat. And then the third thing you can do is just buy a regular ticket, or you can buy a positive space ticket. So my company has discounted prices on tickets if you want a positive space, like you want a seat on the plane, like confirmed seat, you can do that. Or you can just buy a regular old plane ticket for any airline if you have it like that. I don't, so I don't do that. Standby all the way. So that's how it works. What are the differences? So your commuter life might be different from mine. It really depends on the the airport that's closest to you. So you have to kind of look at, so what carriers fly out of that airport. I have 2 airports that are close to me. One that's literally down the street, Love Field, and DFW, but I don't really fly out of Love Fields because only Southwest flies out of them. At Dallas Fort Worth, I have several other options: American, United, JetBlue, like Spirit. I have so much more options. So you kind of have to look at what airlines operate out of which airports. You got to look at how often they fly there. I think from Dallas to Newark, they fly every 2 to 3 hours. I believe it's like 2 to 3 hours. So I have options in the mornings, in the afternoons, and at night. And then you got to look at the times that they fly. I try not to get there or try to take the last flight of the day because, 1, you're playing a gamble. You don't know if you're going to get on. And 2, it's late by the time you get in to your base, whether you're going to your crash pad or you have a house there. It's just a whole thing. So it really depends on your situation. You want to look at the airlines that operate out of your airport, how many flights a day go to the base you're trying to get to, and how often time-wise. Differences when it comes to reserve. I am a reserve. I've only been flying with my carrier for what, 2 months now? So I'm a reserve. And you really have to know your company rules. Like, read that handbook. Every time like we have a delay or something, I just open the handbook, my agreement, to like another page and try to get knowledge, because sometimes crew scheduling or somebody might try to tell you something and you're like, I don't know, let me check my handbook. So be aware of what your handbook says, and be aware of like your agreements that you might have, whether it's commuter clauses, commuter agreements, whatever that means. So for example, the other day, I was on a 5-day reserve bucket. I worked 4 days, and there was 1 day that I was on ready reserve, and nobody was getting called. I wasn't getting called. So I knew I was going into my off days. If I didn't know my agreement, I didn't know that I could call crew scheduling and request an early release. So they released me early from my reserve, and I was able to go home and be back in Dallas by 5 p.m. So I had from 5 on, and then my actual off days. So read your agreement, know what you can do, what you're not allowed to do, and all of that. Having to be available. So with a reserve life, depending on your airline that you go to, you have to be available at a certain time from a certain time. My current airline requires 24-hour reserve, so I have to be available by midnight, meaning I have to fly into Jersey before midnight starts, because they can call me from midnight on. So yeah, that's why I have to make sure I am not there at like, I don't know, 10 p.m. Then in 2 hours later, they can call me for a trip. Yeah. Having to be available, and then being in base before your reserve time starts. Like I said, you always want to fly the night before or the day before. You don't want to leave it to chance, because my last airline, I think our reserve time started at like 9 a.m. So I could say, oh, since my reserve starts at 9, I'm going to fly in at like, I'm going to take the earliest flight of the morning and try to get in by 9. You don't know if they're going to call you while you're in flight, and then they're going to say, oh, we couldn't reach you. So that's a point. So just fly in the night before, guys, as a reserve. If you're a line holder, you know what trips you're flying. If you have a trip that starts at 5 p.m., you don't really have any reason to fly in the night before. You could take the morning flight, get in by 2 p.m. and have 3 hours until you have to go to work. But we don't have that luxury yet. We will hopefully soon. Yeah. So commuter policies. You want to know your commuter policy as a reserve and just as a commuter in general, and how it applies to you. You want to know exactly how, like, what will work. So my current agreement that I am aware of, it might change. I don't know. This is just, I'm speaking for me. I have to be able to prove that I tried to get on 2 flights with my airline. I can't try to prove that I tried to get on 2 flights for another airline. It has to be through my reservation system. So they have to see that I booked this flight well in advance, before 24 hours, and there was seats. And when I booked it, there were seats, and now there weren't seats when I tried to get on. So the commuter policy is different for everybody. I've heard other airlines, it's kind of like the same, kind of similar, where you have to try to get on 2 flights. You just want to know exactly what it is, and you want to know that you can prove it. So what I do is I book my flight from Dallas to Newark a week before I know I have to get on, because a week before I know there's seats on the plane. I screenshot that reservation, 2 of them, because I have to show that I tried to get on 2. Screenshot both of those reservations, show that there were seats when I booked the flight, and then I constantly check and check and check, you know, 5 days before, 2 days before, the day of, see if there's still seats. If there's not seats, at least I knew that I made every effort that I could to get on the flight. And with that, I will also say, do not wait to book for the last flight of the day. If you're booking the last flight of the day, obviously there's no other option for you if you don't get on that one flight. So I try to have at least 3 flights before the last flight of the day, or I also look at other airlines and how their flight loads are looking. So some tips as a commuter. My first one, as I've said it already throughout this video, is always fly in the day before your reserve starts. I don't care if your reserve starts at 9 in the morning and you think I could take the 7 a.m. flight. No, because that's when delays happen. And now you're looking at a 3-hour delay happen. Because then they're going to be like, well, you should have been here. You have to be available. Next one is never rely on the last flight of the day. You never want to wait until that last flight, because I get it, y'all. It cuts your day off. You have to fly in on your day off to be available for your reserve days. You don't want to wait until the last flight, because if you don't get on that flight, now you're scrambling. And that's why people don't like commuting, and they'll be like, oh, I could never commute. I just get so nervous that I'm not going to get on the plane. You're going to get on the plane. If you have a plan, make sure you've checked all the loads. You have at least 3 flights available that you can get on. Like, you'll get on. Trust me. Actually, don't trust me. If you don't get on, I'm sorry. Have a plan though. Always have another carrier as a backup. I know if I don't get on my carrier's planes, I'm gonna go run to another one. Usually they be like 20-30 minutes apart. If there's a flight leaving to Newark for my carrier at 2:30, there's a flight leaving to Newark for another carrier at 3 o'clock. If I see I don't get on that plane, I'm scurrying my little behind to the next terminal to try to get on that other carrier, period. You always want to list for your standby at least a week ahead and screenshot. So like I said, always try to prove that I did everything that I could to get on this flight. That also means knowing your commuter policy. At my regional, I did not have a commuter policy. So it was like, well, if I didn't get to Chicago in time, I didn't have a policy or any kind of clause that was helping me in my situation. So I had to make sure I got to Chicago, okay? Okay. Next is always check your flight loads leading up to your commute. So don't just be like, okay, I booked my flight, or I listed for standby a week ago. I'm just gonna not look anymore until it's the day of my commute. No, because lately cancellations have been happening. Several delays have been happening. You wanna check leading up, because there's this one time, like there's a flight time that me and this other person in my class always used to take, and it was always delayed for like 3 hours. So then we were getting to Jersey by like 8-9 p.m. when we were supposed to leave at like 5. So you always want to check your loads and the status of your flight. That is all I have for you guys as far as commuter life. If you have any specific questions, how it is with me commuting from Dallas to Newark or Dallas to Chicago, let me know. I personally have not had any issues, guys. You'll hear some horror stories. I don't know. I just feel like you have to have a plan, and you shouldn't be waiting until the last flight of the day. It's another job, like I said, because you have to make sure you're checking the loads. You have to make sure you're checking the flight status. It's another job. But I refuse to just move right now. So yeah. Thank you guys for joining me on V Baby Takes, and let me know what you want to see next time. Bye.